Welcome to Shatter.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. He raised his glass, looked right at me, and said it with a grin. Mind if I steal your wife? The room paused, just for a second. Then she laughed. Not the polite kind. The full-throated kind. The kind that turns heads, that tells everyone she's not offended. She's amused. And that was the moment I knew something had already shifted. Not because of him, but because of her. She didn't look back at me. Didn't catch my eye like, you know I'm kidding. No soft touch on my arm. No check-in. Just laughter. That's when I stopped feeling like her husband and started feeling like the spectator. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't even anger. It was recognition. I'd seen this play before. Just not from her. Not until now. We were at a friend's engagement party. Backyard, string lights, music low enough for conversation, wine flowing like it mattered. People laughing in clusters. Safe, intimate, familiar. But somehow, in all of that warmth, I felt cold. He kept talking. She kept laughing. I stood there, holding my drink, nodding along to a conversation I wasn't invited into, even though I was standing 2 feet away. No one noticed me go silent. Not even her. That's what struck me most. It wasn't what he said. It was how easily she let it land. How natural it looked for her to light up in response to someone else. I didn't interrupt. I didn't pull her aside. I just observed. And while she was busy performing ease, I was calculating. Not a plan for revenge. A decision for withdrawal. Because when someone stops protecting what's sacred, you don't argue. You leave. Not physically. Not yet. But mentally. Emotionally. I had already closed the door. Later that night, she smiled at me in the car like nothing had happened. Talked about the party. Said how fun it was. I nodded. She didn't ask if I was quiet. She didn't ask if something was wrong. She was too busy replaying his joke in her head. I could see it. And that's when I knew. This wasn't a moment. It was a mirror. And what I saw looking back was a version of myself I didn't recognize. Quiet. Waiting. Tolerated. That night, she fell asleep next to me like everything was fine. By morning, she was in tears. Because I had sent a message before dawn. 12 words. No punctuation. No anger. Just truth. And by the time she read it, I was already gone. The message was short. You don't lose people. You lose access. I'm done pretending. No good morning. No let's talk. No anger. Just the sound of a door locking from the inside. I sent it at 6:12 a.m. Then turned off my phone. By the time she woke up, I was already out of the apartment. No bag. No suitcase. Just a quiet exit. The kind you only recognize after it's too late to chase. The first strike wasn't noise. It was absence. That morning, I walked into work like nothing happened. But everything had. Something inside me had burned down quietly, and now I was standing in the ashes, strangely calm. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Because the move wasn't about alerting the world. It was about pulling energy back. For the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't trying to fix something. I wasn't writing speeches in my head or scripting possible responses. I was simply done. I sat through meetings, answered emails, smiled at a joke I didn't hear. And while all of that happened, she was probably pacing, trying to figure out what just cracked. And here's the thing about that kind of silence. It forces people to listen to their own echoes. She texted 5 times before noon. Then she called. Then she went quiet. That quiet didn't scare me. It confirmed I'd struck the right nerve. Around 3 p.m., I got a message from someone unexpected. Her sister, Julia. It said, "Are you okay?" I hadn't spoken to Julia in months. Not directly. But apparently, something had shifted behind the curtain. Because when a woman who always believed she held the room starts to slip, everyone notices. I didn't respond. Because that moment wasn't about explaining myself. It was about stepping out of her spotlight and into my own clarity. I wasn't going to play the victim. I wasn't going to accuse or debate. I was simply removing myself. Not to teach a lesson, but to stop participating in a performance where I was just a prop. By evening, she sent a longer message. Said she was confused. That it was just a joke. That I was overreacting. I didn't reply. Because when people have to tell you how you should feel, it's usually because they know how they made you feel. And if someone laughs at your erosion in public, they don't get private access to your restoration. People think clarity comes in a single moment. Sometimes, it builds in fragments, small inconsistencies that accumulate until they feel like weight pressing on your chest. I wasn't looking for proof, But it found me. It started with a bank notification. A hotel charge I didn't recognize, listed under a name that didn't belong to me or anyone I knew. She said it was a mix-up from a spa day with a friend. I nodded. I didn't believe it. Then came the photos. A mutual friend sent me a few shots from the party. Group photos, mostly. Harmless. Until I saw one that stopped me mid-scroll. She was leaning into him. The same guy who made the joke. The angle wasn't inappropriate. But the expression? It wasn't friendly. It was familiar. The same smile she used to give me when she thought no one else was watching. The kind you don't fake. I didn't confront her. I opened a folder on my laptop, labeled it October, and started dropping things in. Transaction logs. Screenshots. Timestamps. Not because I needed to build a case. I wasn't going to court. But because sometimes, collecting facts helps you detach. Each piece of data made things colder. Clearer. Simpler. She called again the next day. Left a voicemail, her voice soft and controlled, asking if we could reset. Said she missed me. Said this wasn't us. But that was the point. This was us. I just hadn't wanted to see it. Every time I ignored something small, a dismissive tone, a deflection, a joke that felt like a warning, I helped build this. So now I was undoing it. Quietly. Thoroughly. I changed the password to the joint calendar. Removed myself from her family group chat. Paused our shared subscriptions one by one. Every click felt like reclaiming oxygen. She noticed, eventually. The messages got longer. Then shorter. Then more frequent. Then angry. Accusations. She said I was ghosting. That I was being manipulative. That I owed her a conversation. But silence isn't manipulation. It's protection. Especially when the conversation would only be used as ammunition. I stopped responding altogether after day 4. And by day 5, I started noticing something strange. Her friends were liking my posts. Not out of loyalty, but curiosity. Because when a man who used to orbit her suddenly stopped spinning, everyone wants to know why the gravity changed. What they didn't realize. The answer wasn't loud. It was in the quiet way I stopped needing to be understood. There's a difference between leaving and disappearing. Leaving is loud. A slammed door. A suitcase. A final speech. Disappearing is silent. Strategic. You don't announce it. You erase yourself piece by piece until the space you filled feels like it was always empty. That's what I did. I started with my phone. Disabled notifications. Logged out of every app connected to her. Then I stopped posting. No statuses. No stories. No digital breadcrumbs for her to follow. Next came the calendar. I cleared my weekends. Removed dinner plans. Canceled mutual invites. She noticed. Sent a message. Why are you pulling back? I didn't reply. Because pulling back wasn't the start. It was the result. I booked a small Airbnb 2 towns over. 3 nights. Remote. No TV. No Wi-Fi. I didn't go to escape. I went to remember who I was before I became someone easy to overlook. She kept calling. The first time, I watched the phone ring. The second time, I turned it off. Her texts changed tone. From light to sharp. From miss you to what is this, to you're punishing me. But silence isn't punishment. It's a mirror. And people hate what they see in their own reflection when no one's there to filter it for them. On the second night away, I checked her socials. Not for closure, just curiosity. She'd posted a photo. Alone. Filtered. A caption that said, "Clarity always wins." 12 comments. 3 likes from people I knew. I saw right through it. She wasn't speaking to her followers. She was baiting me. But I didn't bite. Because the game only works when both players stay on the board. By the time I returned home, she had left a note on the counter. 2 paragraphs. Neatly folded. It said she hoped we could still talk like adults. I didn't open it. I slid it into a drawer and took a long shower. Not to wash away her memory, but to step back into my own body. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. Not because she was gone, but because I was. I had exited the version of myself that stayed small to keep peace. And now, she was texting shadows, still trying to reach a man who no longer lived at that number. His name was Eric, the man from the party, the one with the drink in his hand and the joke on his lips, the one who looked at me and said the words like he was testing boundaries or confirming she had none. I didn't know much about him that night, but I found out, not because I needed revenge, but because sometimes the most efficient exits are surgical, quiet, internal. He was older than me by a few years. Worked in private finance. Married once, no kids. He posted like a motivational speaker, but moved like a man who didn't believe half the things he said. I didn't confront him. I researched. Within a few hours, I found inconsistencies. A property under a hidden LLC that didn't match his name. Payments sent through platforms that didn't align with his income. Nothing criminal, not yet, but enough to raise questions. And I knew someone who liked questions more than answers. A mutual friend, Shane, who worked in real estate compliance. I didn't say much, just passed along a folder. No names, no context, just data. A breadcrumb trail. A week later, Eric's firm started an internal review. Nothing public, nothing dramatic. But quiet pressure can break more than loud scandal ever could. Meanwhile, she was still texting me. The messages were shorter now, more reactive, like she was responding to silence that didn't bend. One afternoon, she showed up at my place. I didn't answer. I watched from the upstairs window as she stood at my door, arms crossed, staring down the steps like they might give her clarity. They didn't. That night, I saw her profile go private. A ripple through the system. Then I got a message, not from her, but from one of her friends. You broke her, it said. But they were wrong. I didn't break her. I just removed the scaffolding she thought would always hold her up. The one I had quietly become without realizing it. As for Eric, he stopped posting. His polished photos disappeared. One of his startup partners suddenly scrubbed his name from their website. I didn't smile. Because this wasn't satisfaction. It was symmetry. The same way she laughed at a joke meant to test me. Now she sat watching a man unravel because he underestimated who was paying attention. I didn't swing at him. I just made sure he slipped on truth. And sometimes, that's all it takes. She was always the center. The voice that carried at dinner tables. The one everyone paused to listen to, not out of respect, but rhythm. Her timing was flawless. Her stories rehearsed. Her presence magnetic. But magnets only work when there's something to pull. And suddenly, no one was moving toward her. It started small. A dinner with old friends. The same group she'd dominated for years. I wasn't there, of course. But I heard what happened. Half the table showed up late. The other half left early. She talked, but people didn't engage. They smiled politely, looked down at their drinks. One of them, Rachel, someone she used to brag about, always having in her pocket, asked a quiet question during dessert. So, do you actually believe the stuff you say about loyalty? She froze, laughed it off, said something about context, about timing, about people twisting narratives. But no one followed up. That silence. That was the social blow, not the confrontation. The distance. It spread like smoke. Over the next week, 3 of her close friends removed her from a group chat. Another stopped liking her posts altogether. She texted one of them directly, got a one-word reply. Busy. She wasn't being canceled. That would have been louder, easier to explain. She was being unchosen. Piece by piece, people were stepping away. Not because of drama, but exhaustion. Performances demand energy. And when the audience gets tired, the actor becomes irrelevant. She started trying harder. Posted more often. Subtle quotes about betrayal. Photos of herself alone in high-end places with captions about growth and letting go. But attention built on performance doesn't survive long without applause. And the crowd had left the room. She didn't blame herself, not at first. She blamed the silence. The whispers. The jealous ones. The timing. She even posted something that sounded like it was aimed at me. A blurry sunset with the line, "Some people only love you when you're quiet." She got 2 likes. Even her curated image was losing shape. Because when someone's value relies on visibility, obscurity becomes their punishment. And I hadn't said a word. I wasn't in those rooms. I didn't call anyone. I didn't need to. I had done something worse. I stopped protecting her from her own reflection. And now the people who once clapped the loudest had gone still, not because they hated her, but because they finally saw her. Isolation doesn't arrive with a bang. It seeps in slowly, like cold air through a cracked window you didn't notice until it was too late. She started sleeping with her phone closer. Not for calls, there were none. For silence. She refreshed her inbox more. Reopened old messages. Typed and deleted texts she never sent. Not because she had something to say, but because no one was asking anymore. Even her routines began to betray her. The gym she once walked into like a runway now felt smaller. She noticed the looks. Not admiration, curiosity. Or worse, indifference. She switched coffee shops. Then again. But there's no hiding when the silence is inside you. Her voice grew quieter in meetings. She used to interrupt. Now she paused too long, trying to gauge whether anyone still cared what she thought. They didn't push back, but they didn't lean in either. And that's the cruel part of social isolation. It doesn't scream at you. It forgets you. She posted less. When she did, it was always from places, never from people. Rooftop bars, sunsets, studio mirrors. No names. No faces. As if erasing everyone else would make her the main character again. But the algorithm had already moved on. I saw her once. In line at the market. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did and didn't know how to act. She looked like someone trying to stand upright with no ground under her. Hair pinned back. Glasses instead of lashes. Holding a basket of items that didn't add up. Wine, protein bars, paper towels. Like she came in to buy something else and forgot what it was. I didn't approach. Because isolation isn't about physical distance. It's about absence of access. She had lost access. To my time. To my loyalty. To the quiet protection I used to give without her ever having to ask. She used to move like she had a shadow that followed her. Something strong, invisible, always present. Now, she walked like she was aware that shadow was gone. And the scariest part? No one took my place. Not Eric. Not a friend. Not a rebound. Because you can't replace someone who never competed for the spotlight. Someone who simply supported it, then stepped away when the light turned cold. And now she stood in it alone. Exposed. Still smiling, but with no one left to smile for. It didn't happen where she wanted it to. Not in a private message. Not in a long, crafted paragraph. Not even in a safe public space where she could control the scene. It happened in a hallway. Midday. Fluorescent lights overhead. Carpet that muffled footsteps. She turned the corner too fast and froze when she saw me. There was nowhere to redirect. No exit. Just 10 feet of space and months of silence between us. She looked thinner. Not physically. Energetically. Like life had been running at a higher speed than she could keep up with. I kept walking. She didn't. She stepped in front of me. Not aggressively. Just enough to block the path. Like she thought proximity could reopen a door she'd already closed with her laughter months ago. I waited. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Then finally said something. A single phrase she must have rehearsed in her head 100 different ways. I just want to talk. But talk was never the problem. It was listening. And now, too late, she wanted to try. I didn't speak. She filled the silence quickly, nervous energy spilling into explanations I didn't ask for. She said things felt like they spiraled. That she never meant to hurt me. That it was complicated. Words, words, words. All lined up to drag me back into a version of her reality where intentions were enough and consequences didn't count. I still said nothing. And in that silence, something shifted. She started to cry. But not the kind that wins sympathy. The kind that comes when you realize you're no longer being received. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was begging for access. And I wasn't granting it. Because some bridges don't burn. They disintegrate, silently, when one person stops walking. Finally, I stepped past her. No pause. No glance. But then, maybe for her, that was the worst part. Not the words I didn't say, but the calm. The clarity. The evidence in my stillness that I had already left. Not just the relationship, but the emotional ecosystem she once ruled. I heard her whisper something as I walked away. Maybe it was, "I'm sorry." Maybe it was, "Come back." Or maybe it was just the sound of her finally realizing. There are no second chances when you spend the first one convincing someone they're disposable. Collapse isn't sudden. It's gradual. A slow drip of realization that the foundation was never stable. And the people who held you up no longer do. After the hallway moment, she tried again. Texts. One-liners. Half-hearted attempts at re-entry. A playlist. A photo of a place we once visited. I didn't respond. Not to punish her. To protect myself. Because once you escape the loop, going back isn't romantic. It's betrayal of your own healing. She started spiraling. Her online presence turned erratic. Gone were the polished filters. Now it was blurry mirror selfies, vague captions about starting over, and passive quotes about letting go of what's not meant for you. No one replied. Because you can't build a crowd on pity. Her old friends didn't res hair. Her circle had thinned to shadows. Even the people who once gossiped with her stopped commenting. The performance was over. I heard from someone at her job. She'd taken personal leave. Canceled a presentation last minute. Missed a leadership meeting without warning. No meltdown. Just absence. And when absence follows arrogance, People don't ask if you're okay. They just adjust. She ran into one of my friends at a coffee shop, Evan. They didn't speak, but she looked at him like she wanted to say something. Maybe explain. Maybe rewrite the past. He nodded politely and kept walking. That's the worst part of collapse. Not the pain, the irrelevance. She used to define the room. Now the room moved on without her. She once told me, people only leave when you give them a reason. She gave me 50, but I didn't leave because of the last one. I left because she looked me in the eye too many times and still chose to pretend I didn't matter. Now it was her turn to sit with the silence. Not mine, her own. The one that comes when your reflection no longer brings comfort. When your name doesn't echo. When the attention you once fed on finds a new host. I didn't post a thing. Didn't make a statement. Didn't celebrate. Because collapse doesn't need an audience. It just needs gravity. And once it starts, nothing you say can stop it. Especially when the one person who used to anchor you now walks past like you were never home to begin with. The last time I saw her, it wasn't planned. It was late. Grocery store parking lot. Cold wind cutting through the air like everything in it wanted to be gone. I had just stepped out of my car when she stepped out of hers. We both froze. No crowd. No lights. No performance. Just two people standing in the same place for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, but wasn't really that long. She looked older. Not in years. In weight. There was something behind her eyes that hadn't been there before. An awareness. Maybe even accountability. But it arrived too late. She didn't speak right away. She just looked at me, not searching for anger, not begging for a return. Just looking. Like she finally saw the version of me that never needed to be loud to be final. I nodded once. Not with warmth. Not with coldness. Just acknowledgement. She took a breath. And finally said the line I think she'd been holding for weeks. You really meant it, didn't you? No tremble. No manipulation. Just truth. I held her gaze. And in that moment, I could see it, all of it. The realization. The regret. The collapse that hadn't stopped, but had only just begun settling in. I didn't know her a reply, but I gave one anyway. Not to open a door, but to close it fully. I didn't disappear, I said. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected. And that was it. No final hug. No long glance back. Just the sound of my footsteps fading into a space that no longer carried her name. She stood still, arms crossed against the wind, and I kept walking. Not to prove anything, just to continue. Because the true ending doesn't come with closure. It comes with clarity. And once you've seen yourself clearly, once you've stood alone in the storm and realized you were the shelter all along, you stop waiting for the apology. You stop needing the explanation. You don't burn bridges. You build boundaries. And you walk, not away from them, but back to yourself. Been through it. When they crossed a line, and you made sure they felt it.